AKAPADers, welcome to your favorite comic book commentator YouTube channel, AKAPAD, Peter A. DeLuca. Today we're discussing some points Rob Liefeld has made on his Robservations podcast on the creation of Wolverine, Deadpool, and Cable. Of course, it's biased. Of course, we're going to address key points. And of course, there's going to be discourse. I don't know. I was trying to come up with something there, guys. Come on, hang out with me. We're going to talk about it. AKAPADers, we just gotta get right into it. Rob Liefeld on Robservations. He basically does an episode where he pitches himself as sole creator of Cable and Deadpool, using Tom Brevoort's, link of that down below, recent blog post where he asks the question, and these are the questions comic fans love. When did Wolverine become Wolverine? Because we can make similar arguments with characters like the Dark Knight. When did the Dark Knight become the Dark Knight? Guess what? When we look at the Dark Knight, and here we go. Same with Wolverine. Same with Deadpool. We're not just talking the comics. The Dark Knight that we have today is part Dark Knight Returns, part Batman Year One, part Neil Adams, part Batman the Animated Series, and part Christopher Nolan's Batman, part Tim Burton's Batman. Michael Keaton is in that DNA. All of it. Do you guys see my point? Same with Wolverine. Wolverine's origin now is of always a conversation when we discuss the characters. The Wolverine we grew up with had no origin, and it was confusing and thrilling and amazing at the same time. The less we knew about Wolverine, the better. But now, if we were to reboot Wolverine, we're kind of starting with the origin. In a large effect, that's what Tom Brevoort means in this blog post. But Rob Liefeld wants to attack it. And if he can attack it, dissect it, break it down, and convince you that Tom Brevoort's position is corrupted and wrong, it serves Rob Liefeld because now he gets to boot him naming himself as co-creator of Deadpool and Cable and get sole creatorship. And you might be like, well, what is Rob's motivation for this? Well, Deadpool's not going away and Cable's not going away. These are his only two real revenue streams when it comes to money for himself in his later years, his family, his children's children. He wants to get sole ownership of Deadpool, so he has more legality against any corporation that could own Deadpool to get more of the royalties and more of the kizash when that character continues into oblivion. This is a good long play by Mr. Liefeld, and I think this episode is nicely designed, and he does bring up some solid points. But here it is. Rob Liefeld will say, Wolverine was Wolverine because we mentioned Weapon X in the first couple issues of his first appearance. Hulk 181, 180, and 182, the Wolverine Origin trilogy. He's referred to in those issues as Weapon X. But anyone that has read comics knows it's not Weapon X until Barry Windsor Smith touches it, until we get the Dogs of War crossover with Chris Claremont, where we kind of get a little bit of an idea of Wolverine's origin. And then Grant Morrison comes in and completely revitalizes what the true idea of Weapon X is and how Wolverine and some of these other characters like Phantom X roll into it. Well, it took about 30-something years for just Weapon X to become Weapon X. So then when Weapon X eventually shows up in the movies, the ideas and the best fruits from that tree are boiled down enough to get poured into other media. Animation, video games, movies, Hugh Jackman. You guys get the point? So what happens with Deadpool? Deadpool comes, New Mutants 98. Okay. Gideon. Domino. No one cares about the first appearance of Domino. No one cares about the first appearance of Gideon. No one cares until we get Deadpool. But Deadpool doesn't become Deadpool until the 2000s. We have Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness. These mother effers out of nowhere. After two 4-issue miniseries for Deadpool. Usually Marvel's formula was we do one 4-issue miniseries and then we launch you into a regular series if the right things are happening as of we think people want it. It took Deadpool 2 4-issue miniseries to go monthly for a reason. He wasn't quite sold. He wasn't quite there. But something happens in the 2000s. Americans become obsessed with anime and manga. And then we have Ed McGuinness, the perfect artist. And Rob Liefeld makes this point in this episode. Comic books is a visual medium, if all of you haven't been tracking. Comic books is there because comic books are cool, and we can't define exactly what is cool. He's explicit in these points, and guess what? He's right in a lot of these points. But at the end of the day, Deadpool did not arrive into comic shops until Ed McGuinness and Joe Kelly worked on that book. And from that time on, Deadpool became a perennial Marvel feature. He became a guy to feature around the Marvel Universe. Now, this is on heels of two things. The hype for Wolverine from the 80s through the 90s dying down. Ghost Rider dying down. The Punisher dying down. These characters were used universe-wide to pump the sales for a lot of these books. I mean, there is a reason why we would have Ghost Rider randomly in an issue of the Mighty Thor. I think that's issue 380. It's like, might be like Ghosts of Asgard or Vengeance of Asgard. But it's wild collaborations like that within the Marvel continuity that made a lot of the 90s a lot of fun, because everybody did want more Wolverine, Punisher, and Ghost Rider, and Marvel just like pumped that stock until it was like a limp D-I-C-K. But then something else happens in the comic book industry. The success of Image, and they farmed, you can arguably that they farmed two other generations or runs of artists from Marvel and DC Comics, and they recruited. See, the recruitment of Image Comics, not Image Comics, but the recruitment of Image Comics destroyed the idea for these publishers to allow new characters, new creations, until a lot of this stuff worked its way out when it comes to how you operate the company, how we contract some of the company, when we hire someone, exactly what is the exchange. It took a little bit of time for that. So there was a drought of new characters. Now, collectively, we could maybe make a list and form the argument that there wasn't a drought. But I will say this, from the 2010s on, a lot of the valuable comic books from that era are key first appearances on characters that are inconsequential in the overall scheme of storylines and continuity. But the characters are interesting, they popped enough, and they're just valuable enough to become a $20, $30, $40 book. Because there was a run of no new characters. There was a lot of commentary on this, that where are these new characters? Deadpool and Harley Quinn are two characters that were adopted during this time by amazing talents, and those talents are the ones that made Deadpool, Deadpool, and Harley Quinn, Harley Quinn. We can make a big argument that did Harley Quinn become Harley Quinn until Margot Robbie portrayed her in a particular way, with amazing character design for that initial Suicide Squad movie. We can make big arguments that Wolverine's origin did not get solidified until Hugh Jackman did it in X2 and did it in Wolverine Origins, and now it's a perennial, it's a repeated take of the character, given some of it is from the comics. But what creates these characters, what created Deadpool, and these characters that we know, they're constantly evolving, but also whittling down at the same time. Every new iteration, every new generation, every new type of reboot or reintroduction of these characters in different media, not just comic books, cherry picks the best ideas from what came before. So the idea that Deadpool was Deadpool in New Mutants 98, and not Deadpool issue 1 monthly with the amazing Ed McGuinness with his anime style appealing, and I really do feel like that's what got that book going. I don't agree with it. I don't see it. And I think it's very dumb and naive. He's playing dumb. I don't think Rob Liefeld is a dumb individual, but he's playing dumb when he acts like this wasn't a known exchange for the comic book industry at the time. We all knew if you created something under a banner, under any banner, it is owned by said banner, by that company. Now, some of these companies are nice and they do play along and they give you a little bit of that golden nugget when characters pop. But at the end of the day, you create Deadpool for Marvel. It does belong to Marvel, and it's up to them to how they want to credit it. Or, through a lot of the initial decades of the comic book industry, we would just argue about who created what, or those ideas, or those creators, even names would just get washed away and moved on because they were inconsequential. Because at the end of the day, comic books were a disposable form of entertainment at the time. Now we get into the 90s and the industry shifted to more of a focus on creators, more of a focus of the people behind the page and behind those covers, and rightfully so. But Rob Liefeld to act naive that he should get full credit because he says that Cable was Cable in New Mutants '87, so therefore that 2-issue miniseries drawn by John Romita Jr. doesn't add anything to Cable, or even Cable's animated appearances doesn't somehow whittle the character down to more of a perfect form to later to get adopted in his next comic book appearance, is him playing dumb. And I want to further this point. Rob Liefeld makes this George Lucas comparison. They say George Lucas created all of it. So yes, that's true. He gets credit, it's undisputed, but here's the difference. George Lucas and the way that the film industry works, and Rob does know this is what I mean by him playing dumb. Rob knows that the film industry is a company within a company, meaning Universal hires a company to make a movie. Universal has a long-standing contract with that company, and then they pick and choose projects and break down their slate. And so a lot of times, some of these production companies have projects in limbo, and if they're not exclusive, they can shop the project around. So you have a time investment. There's money that you put into it, and in a way, you put your own money into a lot of these movies, even through a contractual sense with Hollywood. We hear a lot of times that Universal makes a movie, but it's not really structured that way. That's just a very simple simplification of how the film industry works. But George Lucas did create Star Wars, but if it was a different system, everything that ends up on screen would be disputed, because George Lucas had to form Lucasfilm to make Star Wars, and he hired everyone, and he approved everyone, and he was there every single day. Now, if the industry was different, we would get arguments about the creation of Darth Vader, about C-3PO and Luke Skywalker, or who gets credit for the X-Wing fighter. We don't. It's a different industry. It's not really a one-to-one comparison. When we work for Marvel and DC, it is accepted that we will share credit no matter what, because that is the absolute fair practice, and that is the practice that he's trying to break down for his own benefit. And I just feel like there's not enough pushback on this. If you're on a book that has anybody, all those people share credit for the character, and that is the exchange. Now, if you do not want that, you are free to make your own book, do the penciling, inking, writing, coloring, do it all, and then you get all the credit. That's fair.